Very, very excited to talk to our next guest. It was announced a couple months ago that he will be returning to MMA. Has not fought in mixed martial arts in almost 6 years, believe it or not. It has been almost 6 years since Ralek Gracie fought in mixed martial arts. 3-0. All of his fights have taken place in Japan, and he's returning to action on January 21st, Bellator 170 in Inglewood, California, so his backyard, against Hisaki Kato. That, of course, the card headlined by Chael Sonnen versus Tito Ortiz, airing live on Spike TV. What an interesting matchup this is. Kind of came out of the blue, but certainly one that I think a lot of people, when it was announced, were very curious about. So I wanted to talk to Ralek about that. We are less than 2 weeks away from that interesting fight. He joins us now via the magic of Skype. There he is, our old friend. It has been a while, Ralek. How are you?
Good. How are you, Ariel? My pleasure, man. Always good to be here.
Thank you. So how long was this in the works? You know, this idea of you coming back to fighting, 6 years is a long time. When did you start thinking about this?
Well, I never stopped thinking about it. I mean, I've wanted to fight since I can remember, growing up as a young boy. So, I mean, it's never stopped. And obviously we took a little bit of a break there, and Metamoris was the main focus. But through that whole process, you know, fighting professionally was always part of my spirit and part of my own legacy and my own aspiration.
And so, like I said, a couple months ago, the fight is announced. When did you seriously start thinking, okay, the time is right, I'm going to do this, you know, I'm going to start exploring some options? Like, when did that start to happen?
Yeah, well, I was preparing to fight in Japan last year. Okay. So I was already preparing to fight. I had been training, and then I did a Metamoris bout, and then this opportunity had already kind of been in the pipeline, and I had already been talking to the people there, which, you know, yeah, so it just kind of came together. But it, you know, it was no coincidence. It was just all a matter of, you know, I had been wanting to get back into the game for some time now.
Did you reach out to Bellator first, or did they reach out to you?
I think they reached out to me, actually.
Okay. And were you interested right away? I mean, this is, like I said, your debut as far as fighting in North America. I know you've competed, but MMA fighting in North America, you know, very big stage, massive card in your home state. I mean, was this a no-brainer when they reached out?
A no-brainer in what sense? What do you mean?
Like, were you interested right away, or did you talk to other promotions? Did you play the field a little bit?
No, I thought it would be great. I thought the idea of obviously working with Scott Coker and Mike Kogan and Rich Chow, all those guys are really cool, all people that I have a lot of respect for. And, you know, it just felt really natural. And they approached me, and the timing just made more sense than ever. And here we are, you know.
What was your initial reaction when you heard that they wanted to book you against Kato? I mean, was this the kind of opponent and fight that you were thinking that they would book you in?
Honestly, I hadn't heard of him. Okay. And I wasn't even, I was going to say yes to anybody. So I just went for it. Okay.
And what do you think of him now? I'm sure you've looked him up now, right?
Yeah. Tough guy. Yeah. Very tough guy. You know, I'm excited to test myself, and, you know, I think it's, man, it's great. He's a wonderful, you know, test.
Do you feel like this is kind of a throwback fight? You know, a very accomplished striker against, you know, someone with the ground game like yourself. I know you take pride in your striking as well, but does this kind of feel like, okay, they're kind of banking on the whole striker versus grappler thing?
Yeah, I think anytime anytime you have a Gracie in the fight, it's going to be that. It's going to bring that kind of storyline. I think that's a component for sure. I think that's what they're scared of when they're training. So it's part of the story at this point, and it's unavoidable. And yeah, we're, you know, absolutely.
Now, who is your team? Like, who will be cornering you? Who are you training with for this fight?
I've been training a lot with Brian Ortega, actually, who's undefeated in the UFC. Yeah. T-City. And he's, grew up training with us over at the Gracie Academy, and, just someone that I've always felt a really strong connection with. And being that he's been so active and he's very currently, going after his goals in the fight game, it just felt really right. And we've been training together for some time now, over the last year, training more seriously, getting involved in the process of his camp, and then he got injured, and now he's been really helping me out. So he's going to be in my corner. James, who's been his coach and his striking coach for some time, James Lurson's going to be in my corner. He's been really supportive and just being a part of every workout, every training session. And then Jared Quiddy, who was in my corner when I fought the first 3 times that I fought over there in Japan, and just longtime friend of mine and training partner. And someone who just really gets it, who I feel good about.
Any reservations, any trepidation because it has been so long since you last fought?
Good question. I think, I definitely feel like, it's going to be a new experience, whereas if it would have been a shorter time frame, it would have felt like, oh, this is just another one of these. And I have in my heart and in my experience, I have that, my last fight is kind of it's still a part of my internal space, and it's still part of the way I, interpret the world has been influenced by the fights that I've had over there in Japan. So it's still a part of my experience. It's just, it definitely feels like it's a little bit of a newer territory, which is exciting, which I think is part of, in a way, is also part of the gift of the way that it's kind of come together for me. It just, the excitement of, the anticipation of something like that being kind of new. I think that's cool. And I think there's something that, you bring a freshness to it. You bring a hunger to it that you really wouldn't bring otherwise. And I think, there's 2 sides to it, right? I mean, normally guys, they get into a rhythm of fighting so much that they kind of lose connection with, where their competitor may be and where they may have been last month or whatever. And for me, I'm really just kind of hungry right now and really pushing myself beyond, what I would expect even back then. So it's been a cool process, just training for this, putting this together.
Is this the beginning of phase 2 of your career, or is there a chance that this is just, one fight and then you go on a hiatus? You don't know. Like, are you resuming your MMA career here, or is this just a special night for you?
Yeah, I have a multiple fight contract.
Okay.
And I'm excited to roll it out. I'm excited to get a couple fights in and see, really just test myself and be in the ring and be in the arena more. And I've wanted to do that since 2010. It just, life got in the way. I got injured. They didn't pay me. There was multiple things that happened that just put me on a different course. And, I'm back, and I feel good, man. I feel blessed, and my body feels strong, and it's a good time, and we can't wait forever to, take these opportunities and go in the ring and represent.
Yeah, I remember that when you fought in Dream against Sakuraba, you said that you didn't get paid. You never got paid?
No.
Wow. How much did they owe you?
60.
Wow. You think you'll never see that money? Never got a dime? Wow.
Well, the experience was priceless.
Sure. I guess you could say that. But it's nice to get the money too.
I mean that, but yes, it would have been very nice.
And when you said that you were considering fighting in Japan, was it for Ryzen?
It was for Ryzen, yeah. So we were discussing that and going through the process, and it just ended up falling through last minute. They kind of wanted to fill, a certain spot on the card, and they looked at me, going into it, and I thought I was going to compete in the card up until like a week before the event. So I was training, I was getting ready to fight. That was back last December. Okay. Not this last one, the one before it, 2015.
Yep.
So it was an exciting time.
And the last time you fought in 2010, were you a father yet?
I was a father since 2007. 2007. I had my first son.
Okay.
Yes. I've had 2 kids by the time. Yeah.
So now you have 2. Or you have three?
Now I have three.
Okay. Yes. I get my question. I was wondering if it changes at all. Like now that, okay, maybe your kids are bigger, it's different having one versus three, obviously. Do you feel like I mean, obviously you're a different guy. You've evolved, you've matured. A lot has happened in your life, but just being a dad fighting, and maybe your son who's born in 2007, I mean, I'm certain he knows what's going on. He's probably almost 10 years old, right? Does that change at all how you approach this?
He's 10 years old. Yeah. It's funny. My younger son was like, my two boys at the time, I just had a daughter. So she's brand new, fresh out of the womb.
Congrats.
And thank you. And my two boys, I said, guys, so I'm going to go, and fight. And they know that I've fought in Japan, and they know that they've seen videos, and I'm going to fight, and I'm going to do the fighting with the punching, and I'm going to do that. How do you guys feel about it? And my older boy said, Dad, I don't want you to do that. And my younger boy said, Dad, you got to do that. So they were both like equally, oppositely excited. So it was kind of cute, but the consensus is that, this is part of my life and part of my destiny and what I do. So they're excited.
Will they go to the fight?
No, they won't go to the fight. No. And there's a couple other reasons for that, more logistic reasons for that, but
will you let them watch on TV?
Yeah, actually. Okay. I told the 10-year-old, catch me on Spike, buddy. You're going to see it.
When was your daughter born?
My daughter was born just late August. So we're...
The reason I ask is because I have two boys myself, and I recently had a daughter as well who was born in late October. So I thought that we were on the same wavelength, although your boys are bigger than mine. But your boys sound like mine because the older one is the more sensitive one. The younger one is the guy who likes to fight and things like that. So I feel like my sons would say the same if I said something like that to them. So that was funny to hear that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's congratulations.
Thank
you. I did hear, and actually, I'm a friend of John Beers. So
yes, John Beers.
Saw something on his Instagram. He was there with you, and that's pretty cool, man.
That's my guy. That's my best bud. I appreciate that. Okay, so I would be remiss, and actually the reason why you know John is because he worked with you at Metamoris. I'd be remiss if I don't ask you about Metamoris. What is the state of the company? You founded it. It was successful for a time. What's going on with Metamoris as you smile at my question?
Man, I thought you'd never ask.
I was just building up to it.
Yeah, no, the state is we're in a little bit of a hiatus, and it's been an interesting process, as you know, and you've caught some of the headlines, some of it true, some of it very overexpressive, but coming from, I guess, a nature of truth. But, the idea for us at this point is to regroup and really just refine our business model, get me a little bit off of the front lines as far as running all of the business processes, and build a little bit more of an actual business foundation. And, the thing about Metamoris that I will say, and there's a lot that's been said, is that it was a big test, and it was a big push in an industry and in a sport that had no prior push and no prior, space for something like Metamoris. And it was such a big passion project for me personally. And I got so deep into it, and I, personally put myself financially at risk on so many levels that if the average person would be completely, shocked at the level of pressure that I put on myself and my family and everything that I was going through. But it's still going, and it's something that, I haven't given up on. It's something that I feel really positive about. And we just, again, I can't run everything. I can't run the entire business and be the person creatively involved in the exploration of jiu-jitsu and the dissemination of the media and the content, which is my real passion. My real passion is, go Donkey, go buddy, go. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. So the idea is to essentially create a little more structure and be a little more responsible with the whole approach. And for me, my thing was, I just was like on a crusade with the whole thing. We're just going to keep pushing it. We're just going to build the biggest entity. We're just going to, and for me, like, it had worked on certain levels, but then on other levels, everything wasn't in line with what you would expect from a very responsible business that was growing at the rate that we were growing. And there's so many complexities to it that we would literally use 3 hours of your time explaining. But at this point, I'm very hopeful that, more than anything, I think with the absence of Metamoris, within everyone who understands and values what we were doing and the quality that we were bringing, including the athletes, the absence of Metamoris is just bringing more of a clear need and I think a sign for need for something like Metamoris to bring that quality and to bring that sensationalism that still just I think hasn't really been around other than in the form of Metamoris, and I think that's true. And I'm getting a lot of feedback and support from fans all over the world who really are behind us and want to see us succeed. But for me personally, I want to focus on fighting, and I want to focus on the creative aspect of the business, and I want to focus on telling the stories, getting the information out in a way that is in line with my own standard, for quality and for the passion that I have for the sport and for jiu-jitsu as a whole. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that I did. I feel like that was my biggest contribution to Metamoris, was building the brand and not necessarily building a business, and I don't ever really want to be good at building a business. If that makes sense.
Can you confidently say that Metamoris will put on more events in the future?
That's a good question. Confidently. I'm when you ask me questions like that, the way that I interpret that and the way that I feel about my life and the way that I approach things, absolutely. There's no way it's not going to happen. But are we under a lot of pressure? Do we have, are we against many odds? Absolutely. And am I being a realist when I say that it's possible that we won't? It's possible that we won't, but I think that's important for people to know too. And I think it's important for people to realize that there's a real struggle, and I think people should appreciate that, and I think when you support something and when you purchase a pay-per-view, you make a difference, and when you just watch it on YouTube afterwards and then get online and talk shit about me and talk about how I shouldn't do things a certain way, it doesn't really apply to you where we're going with this. But I do believe that it's important for us to push forward, and I think that not only that, it's a necessity for jiu-jitsu and for the athletes and for everything that we were pushing towards. I feel that we only got to a 10% mark of what I really expected to be and where I expected us to reach by this time. So with that being said, I don't know. I don't think Metamoris can be held down. With everything that we've been through, I think there's just, I think the brand has so much potential, and it's, there's a lot of future opportunity given the right subset of people and required structure, if that makes sense.
As of right now, does Metamoris owe anyone money? Fighters, athletes, vendors, because that was a big thing that came up, that I'm owed them, people claiming things. Do you owe anyone? Yes. When I say you, Metamoris, you do still?
Metamoris owes money, yes.
A lot?
Well, you have to
to a lot of different people, or to one specific.
We owe money to a group of people, yeah, and it really sucks. Yeah, it's not cool.
Do you foresee being able to pay these people, or is this going to be like your situation? I mean, I know you can sympathize considering. So
it's weird, right? So on one hand, the idea is to get a loan, pay everyone, right?
Uh-huh.
Get an investment, cover everybody, so that way people say, "Oh God, we got paid, everything's great." Moving forward, everything kind of, there's no more kind of water in the bucket, basically. There's nothing for people to kick over. And that's one side of it. And that'll make people say, okay, we want to support your brand. That's cool. Well, the irony of it is that if we're not able to do that, let's say, then the only other option is to try to dig it out of the hole. right? And to build it out of the hole and to create opportunities for people to support the company, purchase things, and then pay people from that revenue, which is the way businesses operate. But there's usually less of a lag time between making your money and paying your quota or paying your, your debts for that month or whatever it may be, your liabilities. So we have definitely a lot of a lag at this point that we have to cover. And that debt is something that we take very seriously. But the irony has been that we have been getting less support, and people want to purchase less of a pay-per-view when they say, well, why are you putting on a show when you owe people? This doesn't make sense. This is backwards. And when in fact, it's kind of like, well, what are we going to, you know what I mean? And if you would and Metamoris 3, on the other hand, which was our biggest show ever, and everybody was in love with Metamoris 3, and it was like Ralek Gracie versus Eddie Bravo, the biggest event of grappling ever in history. Metamoris 3, we went into that show in debt. You know what I mean? And we made it happen, and we were winners. And so society was happy with us, and everybody got paid from that show, so it was okay. So the moral landscape is pretty much the same, but the perception has changed significantly to where people are judging us on a level where they're saying, well, they thought that, well, you may have had the money and decided not to pay AJ or pay this person or do this or that. And then it becomes Ralek is an evil person who's not doing. So then and obviously the media exacerbates all of that, and all of the symptoms become, a lot more inflamed. So it's tricky, and it's by no means short of a large lesson, for me. And I'm all about the lesson in life, and I'm all about moving forward, and I'm all about putting the rubber on the pavement and going, and moving forward. And I will say that, this is cool because you're a great avenue to kind of get information out within the MMA, but jiu-jitsu industry, broader scope industry. And I don't want to really cover this after this meet. This is like kind of the last interview I want to do on a lot of stuff. Because first of all, we got to focus on the fighting stuff. Aside from that, we just have to focus on the present, and we have to be effective in the moment in everything that we do, or we can, stand losing everything. But I really feel that there's, I kind of lost my thought, but essentially this is kind of the last,
I hear you.
discussion for me as far as approaching this. And it's been a weird trial.
I mean, what's it been like? Because as you know, it became this massive story, and you have people coming at you, and people are upset that they're not getting paid. And like I said, I'm sure you can sympathize, but you went from sort of being this darling, and then I felt like there was this weird thing where media wasn't allowed, and then this payment thing, and then you guys kind of became, and then these new promotions came, and I think you were the first to do it like this. And then you have like EBI and Polaris and other, Submission Underground. And then all of a sudden they became, the darlings, and you became the villain. What's that been like for you? How do you digest all of that?
Yeah. So, I think it's been interesting. And I think interesting is in some ways it's been hurtful. In other ways, you just kind of realize that a lot of the things that happen when you're in the public sphere are very much, they're very unique, and it's its own space. And it's really hard when you're dealing with a reign of media terror. It becomes this really weird, and it affects business majorly. So I think that, well, first of all, going back to what you said about media and the media issue, and I know that there were people who were offended by that. And obviously for us, we weren't letting certain press into our shows, and we were being pretty selective. And I think even in one show, we didn't have any press. And part of it wasn't a thing that it wasn't that we weren't about press. In most cases, we didn't have the ability to facilitate the press. Like we thought of it as more of an additional expense and an additional kind of facilitation aspect of our show that we weren't really equipped to focus on. And people don't realize that we weren't that big of a company. We're a modern day internet company with literally no employees, and we expand when we run a show, and we hire on, you know, people, we hire on vendors, and we hire on people to do different jobs, and that's the only way we could really stay as efficient as we were. And even with that, we were dumping all of our money into just building the most elaborate show and getting the best talent that we could. And, you know, that's where we felt that's where we felt that it made sense to put the investment. And, you know, in many ways it paid off because we built the brand, but in other ways we really took a big hit because we didn't have the backup that you have when you structure your business differently. And a lot of these newer companies that are trying to do what we're doing, in some ways they're taking a smart approach because they're being very frugal. They're running not very high quality shows, in my opinion. I mean, in everyone's opinion who pays attention. And and so part of it is, okay, they're building it up, you know, and they're taking their time. Well, we didn't have the luxury of doing that because I came in with a big investor who said, hey, I'll pay for everything and we'll just do the biggest show ever. And the curse is, well, now all of our fans expect the biggest show ever. And, you know, they're expecting a UFC of grappling show. Well, put yourself in my position and decide what you're going to do next when all of a sudden your investor is gone and you have, you know, fans hitting you up all around the world saying, when's your next show? When's this going to go down? And you have no money, but you have to figure out a way to justify building a brand that and continuing to push a brand that people are going to be excited about.
Where's this investor, by the way? Where did he go? Or she?
Yeah, he just kind of backed off and decided that, you know, it wasn't enough of a return, basically. Okay. And he decided that after Metamoris 2.
Okay.
So we had been from 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That was me hustling the American dream style.
Right.
And you know, it was part of the experience was me learning that and realizing that, you know, you do have to really delegate at the right time, in the right way, with the right people, and you have to get more money in the right way with the right people. And you have, because the trajectory that we were going was such a new territory, and there's so many facets to it. Like, just for an example, there were so many questions that I would have on a weekly and daily basis for running our company that would be beyond any of my advisors. There was no answers to more than half the questions that we were literally coming up to every week, every day, saying, okay, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do here? There was no comparison for the business model. When you look at just live streaming sports, there was very few companies that were even doing that when we started. There wasn't even organizations that were really offering a web package that would allow you to kind of have this all-in-one experience to live stream a sport and to sell it and to have a paywall. And we were kind of on the fringe of that whole industry. Meanwhile, we're also pushing the sport of jiu-jitsu, which in a lot of ways is smaller than ping pong on the global scale of things. Mm-hmm. And it actually is, you know, as far as market and as far as everything that it is. And we're trying to make it bigger than the UFC in a very aggressive way, you know, and not to take anything from the UFC or MMA or anything, but we're on this mission saying, hey, why aren't people realizing that jiu-jitsu is just as significant as MMA, because it's a part of MMA, and here it is, and this is what we're doing. And we did that effectively, you know, but we did that under a lot of stress, and we did that under a lot of pressure. To myself personally, to my family, to people involved, and to fighters now at this point, and to people who haven't been paid. And you know, it's been a gnarly road. And man, there are people that I haven't paid who have been so patient with me, who have been so understanding of the situation, and I have been very real with them, you know, and I've reached out to them and had one-to-one conversations, and it's just part of the reality of what we've kind of come to. And it's not what I planned, and it's not what I wanted, and I think they get that, you know, and I think they understand that I'm not giving up on it, you know. I haven't just filed bankruptcy and said, hey man, stop calling me, I don't want to hear from you. You know what I mean? Like, that would be the easy route.
Them. That's your goal. Your goal is to pay everyone.
Oh, the goal is to make another show happen, pay them, bring everything back to a level where we're functioning, you know, full 12 cylinders, which, you know, I don't think we've ever functioned beyond 2 cylinders because I've been running the entire business. So I haven't been able to function the way that I think we should be functioning as a business, with the size and the growth and the scale that we were pushing to, and what we were trying to accomplish. And, you know, you could say, well, the market isn't big enough. That's not a good move, and that's not a good investment. And people have told me that. Well, other people have said, well, shit, what you've done and the niche that you've created and the way that you've set up your business, we've had a year in 2014. We had an amazing year. You know, we had a great income. We had a great, you know, everything was moving really well. And we had done things in the sport that, you know, no one's still doing. People who are trying to run pay-per-view event, they haven't gotten anywhere close to our numbers. So we have something. We just need to refine it. We need to put me in the right place, which I'm happy to be in, provided that we have some really, you know, capable and interested people who are, you know, in the right place. And for me, you know, that's the goal. It just has to be done in the right way at the right time. And, you know, in the meantime, I'm going to focus on my passion, you know, and I've always put myself aside, and I've been putting all of my personal dreams and my aspirations aside, because Metamoris has really consumed me, and it's become this incredible journey of a passion project. But fighting is my dream. You know, being in there and testing myself is part of my blood and is part of my history, and it's something that I have to do. And, you know, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, you know, involved in Metamoris and anything. If anything, it's more respect, because I'm saying, hey, I don't want to even be involved unless I can come in with the right people at the right time, you know, and create something that will be sustainable for the industry and will be done in a way that is respectful of what we've gone through, and will apply the lessons so that we don't have to deal with the same mistakes and go through the same valleys that we've gone through.
One last thing on this, and I appreciate you answering it so passionately. What is the state of the relationship with your brothers, Hiron and Rener? Because it was startling to see them put out this statement that, you know, they're sort of distancing themselves from you, and, you know, you guys are such a tight-knit family. It was sad to see that, and I know no one was happy about that, but they felt compelled to do it. How are things now with them?
Yeah. You know, things, I will say this, there's 2 sides to this. One side is there's family things that you don't really talk about, right, in public.
Sure.
And there's relationship stuff that you have, like I don't know if you have brothers, do you have siblings?
Yeah.
So there's stuff that it goes back to when you're kids, you know, and you have things that you rub people a certain way and things happen. So there's that side of it. And I'm not going to bore you with details, but then there's the other side, which is, they clearly wanted to, you know, separate themselves from me in a business sense and create a little bit of a border so that people understand that, hey, Ralek is kind of on this crusade. He's in a very, you know, deep valley within his business and his life goals. And, you know, we don't want you to think that he's involved in our business. And, you know, and I didn't, so it's a little bit of that. And I get it. You know, I think I can understand that they would do that in some ways. And in other ways, I think, you know, you don't really do that. But, hey, you know, they made that decision and they went for it, and it's their business. And, you know, they're making that decision.
So do you not talk to them now?
Yeah, the relationship has been kind of sparse. It's been kind of on and off, and, you know, they're my brothers. You know, I mean, can we call each other? We've talked. Yeah. Can I call them and just say, hey, what's going on? Yeah, we can talk, you know?
Yeah.
There's things that we need to work out. I think above all, I need to kind of deal with my problems and my business and my life to the point where they can say, okay, well, you know, and I think that's part of it too. And I think that's life, you know, and I think that the irony is that in life, people in general don't really want to be on a sinking ship. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to be on a winning boat. Everybody wants to be around when things are good and safe and things are comfortable, and I think that's just across the board. People feel more comfortable when you're successful being next to you, you know, and I think that's the irony, and that's the nature of what we appreciate about coming back from a very deep time in your life where you're being held down by the forces, or, you know, your own mistakes, or the trials and tribulations of your experience. And I think that's the hero's journey, right? And I think part of the hero's journey is that we secretly desire space when we are going through a very hard time. And I think we kind of push people away in very direct and indirect ways. And I'm not saying I did that to them in any serious way, but if I have, I would take responsibility for that. And I think there's a possibility that, you know, everyone kind of has that when they go through that type of experience. And we're just doing it now on a public scale. Yeah. And the public aspect of it makes it a little more complex and a little more interesting. But, you know, at the end of the day, hey, you know, we're used to it. We grew up in a family where most of our business is public, and a lot of people, you know, they dig into it, and there's a lot of interviews, and there's a lot of people, family members say this, and, you know, you go over and check with this family member and they say something different. And it's, you know, and I think one thing to remember is that, you know, at the end of the day, we all kind of represent a cause, and we all represent a legend and a myth and an experience of being Gracie. But we're all human beings, and we all have our own unique ways of doing things and seeing life. And, you know, and I think people forget that. I think people kind of box us up, and they think you're a Gracie and you're this. And I think part of the separation that my brothers had kind of implied with this whole letter and this whole thing is a good thing, because it implies that there is some differences, and that's okay. Yeah. And diversity is important, you know, and in life, I think a lot of people, we shun diversity, and we're scared of diversity. And even in families, you know, you have parents who say, hey, well, I want everyone to be like this son, or I want everyone, you know, and that's across the board, you know, and you have, you know, movies and books written about it. So I don't know. I think it's, in a way, it's kind of special, you know, that, you know, we've been exposed as being diverse as a family and as brothers, you know.
It's never been dull when it comes to your family. You guys always keep us on our toes, and I know you didn't want it to be that way. I know you didn't want this to get out into the public, but I appreciate you addressing it, because I know, you know, it's a sensitive thing. It's family, and at the end of the day, who wants to talk about these kind of things in the public eye? Let's end on this and bring it back to the fight. This is a heavy interview. This is not your typical pre-fight interview, so to speak. There's a lot that's happened in your life since the last time we spoke. For someone watching this and thinking, okay, Ralek Gracie is returning to action on, you know, January 21st. I mean, is Ralek Gracie returning to action with all this on his back, all this on his shoulders? Is this your way of kind of, you know, starting fresh? Like, how does one perceive Ralek as he enters his Bellator debut, as he returns to action? This is a lot of stuff, a lot of baggage, so to speak. How should the fans? What's the message here? What's the takeaway?
Well, that's a great question, and I think your timing is perfect, because I just let it all go with you right now.
There it is.
It's
free at last.
It's free at last. No, I think, man, I do think it's a heavy time, you know, for me, but I do think that that's the beauty of also stepping into the ring, and that's the beauty of actual, like, combat, is that it forces you to realize many very important life lessons, you know. And I think getting into the ring, you can't carry that stuff in there with you. You have to meditate. You have to bring yourself, you know, for me personally, like, I bring myself to a point where I have come to terms with everything that has come before that point, you know, and I'm walking in there with, you know, a level of freedom and a level of clarity that, you know, I think allows me to be in the moment and be effective. And it's beautiful, because it's kind of this life or death thing where you have to walk in and be in that moment and be ready. And I've had that before, and I've had that experience before, and I've had things happening in my life before I went into my last fights, you know, and I think there's part of it where, and it's usually very close to the fight, where I start feeling that there's like a shedding process. And I think nature says, you're going to shed this weight, and you're going to have to step in and be, or you're going to carry it in and you're going to lose, or something horrible is going to happen. And I think that's the beauty of you know, this, of being able to witness modern day combat the way that we do through MMA, because you see that in you know, a lot of these fights where you'll see someone beat someone where they, you know, the person that they beat lost to someone that they lost to, or there's like a weird, and it's just maybe months removed, and people end up losing to people that you don't expect, or things happen. And that's the mental aspect of the game where, it's
no greater example than Ronda Rousey, right? Ronda Rousey. You are speaking exactly about the Ronda Rousey situation right now.
Right. And that was the whole question. And everyone who I spoke to, everyone in my training camp who were fighters, who I know, everyone who is kind of, you would consider educated on the subject of fighting.
Yep.
Their only question was whether she mentally would have the capacity to go in there and fight.
Yes.
And I think
finally someone's saying it. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think that's what it's all about. But that's what I'm in it for. That's what we're here for. We're not here to, and that's why you can justify getting your ass beat potentially, or something going horribly wrong, or you could break your jaw, or you could people get cracked orbital bones. And I don't know. For me, the mental aspect is the most interesting and the most exciting. And it's really not about winning or losing. It's about going in and being in the moment and testing yourself and being ready for it. And what you learn, you can take with you for the rest of your life, and I believe in that. And that's why I think I'm appalled at the way people respond to Ronda Rousey. I think it's horrible. I think it's a sign of ignorance, to be honest.
Great stuff, Ralek. Welcome back. It's good to see you again. Good to talk to you again. Good luck on January 21st. And thank you for giving us so much time and talking about some of these things. I know a lot of people were curious to hear from you and get your side of the story. So we appreciate it very much. We'll be watching on the 21st of January. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thanks, Ariel. You're always so serious, man. All right, dude.
Much love. There he is, Ralek Gracie. Appreciate his time very much. Interesting stuff. Wow. Almost an hour there with Ralek Gracie, and really kind of explaining it all, giving his side of the story. I'm sure there are many different sides of the story. I know a lot of people have been upset that there have been purses or different wages missing, and hopefully that he can stay true, because if there's one guy who can sympathize with that, it's him, because he wasn't paid by Dream back in the day when he fought Kazushi Sakuraba. I always appreciate Metamoris for giving me my black belt. I worked so hard for it. It sits proudly on my table here. What a moment that was for me personally in my life. But not to make light, you do hope that they can be successful. Of all the jiu-jitsu leagues, promotions that have come out, it feels like in that genre, they were the first to sort of reignite the interest in jiu-jitsu and paying to watch jiu-jitsu, pay-per-view, whatever, here in the United States and North America. And still the only one that I've gone out of my way to watch. I mean, I remember when Eddie Bravo fought Ralek Gracie or competed against. I mean, that was a big deal. We had Bravo on the show afterwards, and we've had other people who have competed in Metamoris on this program as well. They had a great vision and a great ability to blend, the showmanship of MMA, pro wrestling, boxing with the art of jiu-jitsu, and the presentation was really nice. So hopefully they can figure it out, come back and pay everyone what they are owed. For now, he will be competing January 21st on Spike against Hisaki Kato.